This is a German airfield in France in late 1944.
And what inspired you to build this, to collaborate with these individuals and build this?
Well, us as builders were talking to each other, and we always wanted to make these planes. And once this idea floated around of having all these planes, what to display them on. And at that point, we figured out we're all making these different styles of planes. And normally they wouldn't be in a squadron together. But I researched in late 1944, when France was collapsing for the Germans and they were really just trying to get out of there, they put all these random planes together in these airfields, these really not well built, like non-concrete airfields, airstrips to build them. So we thought that would be the best way to portray our different styled planes together in one spot.
Very cool, very cool. Now, what was your contribution to the collaborative here?
My contribution was this square right here, this middle square, and then I built the Bf 110 and the Opel Blitz fuel truck.
Very cool. Now, you have some really cool, sort of action sequences going on. Before we dig into the rest of the build, point out some of the different sort of things going on. What are people doing?
Down here we have two pilots, the two Bf 110 pilots, who are getting briefed by a Luftwaffe officer while their gas crew is pumping gas into the plane. Back here we have a guy who is taking a break.
That looks like is that a cigarette or a pipe?
It's a pipe.
Very nice. And that's just a minifig hand, right, with an ice cream cone in it?
Yep. Very slick, very slick. Thank you. Down here, it's an officer and a machine gunner are getting supplies ready in their MG nest, and these guys have action too that they can tell you about.
All right. So what are we going to take a look at?
Cool. Well, we'll take a look at my contribution over here. I had this L right here, including this flak pit. Fortunately, I already had this flak gun pre-built, which it fit in perfectly. As Eric said earlier, these airfields were pretty much built last minute. They were not permanent establishments. So a flak pit like this, the wheels are on hand, so if they have to leave on a moment's notice, they can. There's guys walking around here with anti-tank weapons just in case they get overrun. As well, a lot of times the Germans use these flak guns as anti-tank weapons as well. So we
Very cool.
Put that in there, to show that this was something that wasn't permanent at all.
Now, talk about the process of designing something like that. Were you able to use previous builds to kind of go off of? Were you looking at original schematics?
Basing it off photographs of what we've seen, in actual airfields like such. The actual design of it, we had, aside from a previous build we did a couple years ago, our lug did. So I was able to reuse that design again, so that made it pretty easy. The hardest part of that was I had the rest of the display is 1 brick tall, but I had to make this 2 bricks, so I had to figure out a way to kind of flow it into where it looked natural.
Very cool, very cool. Now, what else are we going to take a look at? Max, what did you do?
So over here, hey, I'm Max. Over here, this is a Focke-Wulf 190. It was one of the top performing German fighters in the Second World War. It was used mostly as a bomber killer, which meant that in the later years of the war, when the Western Allies were bombing Germany on more or less a daily basis, the Focke-Wulf would go up in the air every day, search for these bombers, and if possible, shoot them down.
Very cool. Now describe the design of this airplane. What makes it unique?
Well, as Eric said, by this point in the war, the Luftwaffe was, really in disarray, and in late 1943, there was a raid on this place called Kassel in Germany that pretty much destroyed all the oil that the Luftwaffe had stockpiled. And, that from that point, the German Air Force, which had really been, the greatest in the world, started to take a steep decline. And because of a lack of money and a lack of supplies and a lack of oil, they started later in the war reusing old and sometimes outdated vehicles and supplies from earlier in the war. So as you can see, Jack's, Stuka, and Eric's 110 are in a French or Italian camo scheme, but my Focke-Wulf is in tan, which represents the Mediterranean theater or the North African theater of war. So the idea is that was a plane that's been taken out of commission but then brought back in out of necessity.
That is super, super interesting. When you guys were putting this collaborative together, what tools did you use to communicate? How did you keep everything on the same page so that you weren't doing each other's work and things like that?
Well, we have a group chat through just an app called Telegram, and through that we can send pictures. We have our layout that we drew out, and the way we did it actually worked perfectly with the airstrip here, because we didn't have to do any modifications with it once it was here, because the way we laid it out was in even numbers of a 32 by 32 base plate.
Very cool.
So
Kind of came together.
yes, exactly. It fell into place perfectly.
So we did some math when we were. The only thing that really had to be perfectly lined up was the airstrip itself. So it starts at 8 and it ends at 24. It starts at 24 and it ends at 16. And everybody just built their sections that way. And when we got here, it all lined up perfectly.
Now, if you had to give a piece of advice to someone looking to do a build like this themselves, what do you wish you knew before you guys started out? Anyone can speak to that?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
Don't count on anything. Yeah.
Start early. We pretty much had this idea 6 months ago. That's the best thing you can do. Give yourself enough time to order parts, to figure out how it's going to, to distribute the workload over, an even number and whatnot. But yeah, just start early, plan ahead. That's the best thing I can give advice to anybody.
Very cool. Wonderful stuff, guys. Thank you so much for sharing.